Wind and Fire, and The Sound of Silence. Those are the soundtracks you can listen to for this Sunday's text. We are in 1 Kings chapter 16, 19, verses 1 through 18. We got Elijah. We got God showing up, not in the earth, not in the wind, not in the fire, but in the sound of silence. That's my connection to those classic songs. Hi, Adriene. Welcome back. It's been a while since you've been here, since you've been in the pulpit. How are you? What's going on? And how are you feeling about Sunday?
That's a lot of questions. How am I? I'm good. I'm trying not to get sick. Like we're in that sort of cold flu season. But I've gotten my shots. I encourage people to get their flu and COVID shots. They're both still real. Science is still real. Get your vaccination. Especially if you're coming to church and you're around a lot of people. Just a reminder that we vaccinate not just for ourselves, but for the people that we care about, some of whom have compromised immune systems. Okay, public service announcement over. So I'm doing well. I am excited to be back in the pulpit. We are, in the season of origins, which is super exciting. So we had Dr. Kate Common last week, and we are trying to thread this idea of conquest into our season before Advent. And we've got some really great stories to think about that. And this is one of them. I read a commentary and it was really kind of extraordinary because in this text, we focus very much on the still small voice and that sort of lovely place of Elijah lamenting and being tended to by the angel. But this commentator was saying there is a streak of violence through this story, and Elijah meets it out first when he utterly murders all of those prophets who don't agree with him. And we seem to be in a place in our geopolitics now where we just murder people we don't like or that we suspect of things. And then the tables turn and he is running for his life because someone is trying to murder him. So I'm playing with those two ideas.
I picked up on this even at the end of the chapter. So this is Elijah's kind of grand finale, it seems. He's depressed. He's running away. He thinks it's all going to hell. And God's like, don't worry. And that's where there's the earth, wind, and fire. And God's not in those. Then there's the sound of silence. And that's where God is. And God's like, go back, anoint this person king, and anoint Elisha to be your successor as prophet. Which is interesting to see how that happens. So Elisha picks up next. But then there's this part where he says, whoever escapes the sword from Hazael, Jehu shall kill. And whoever escapes the sword from Jehu, Elisha shall kill. Wait, what? I didn't know part of being a prophet was killing people. That is not the job description I'm used to thinking about when I think about what it means to be a prophet.
Right. So it's interesting thinking about these things in light of what Dr. Common has shared with us. These are people who are marginalized, traumatized, trying to carve out space for themselves. And they write these stories of dominance and of a God who takes care and crushes their enemies, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've also learned that was probably not historically the truth, but it's the story that you tell to make your people great and to make your God great, quite frankly.
It's the my God is bigger than your God. My dad can beat up your dad. That's we haven't entirely shaken that as a society. My country has more nukes than your country. We still live in those violence gone viral domination systems.
We do, sadly. And as we're approaching Advent, I think it is helpful to think about this still small voice God, because we imagine, again, we've been talking a lot about the people who live in the wilderness who probably are not coming out of the wilderness. And so what about the people who are running for their lives? And violence is a regular thread of their life. And Elijah experiences that for a brief moment. But there are people we have to remember, as Miguel de la Torre reminds us, this is their life. They're always running. There's always violence.
This text always strikes me too, because God, Elijah's on the mountain, and then there's the earthquake, the big giant wind, the fire, and it's, if you read the books prior to this, especially the Torah, Exodus, God shows up in those ways. It seems like we're used to seeing God show up in the scripture, in the earth, in the wind, in the fire.
Mm,
But in this account, God isn't showing up, or that's not what Elijah at least notices God in. I just
mm.
find that interesting that the ways we might be used to encountering God previously, sometimes God shows up in a new way. And perhaps sometimes if that way previously had a little more aggression and violence, we need a new way to find God,
Hmm.
because we can't just continue to repeat those cycles of God as violence and God as domination that we are often inheriting.
Right. That's a very interesting comment because it makes me wonder if God has shown up in all these ways before and we get this story. Like, is it some sort of pivot? Is it some sort of hinge?
Mm,
And I'm interested now to research and find out what comes after this.
yeah,
I never thought of it that way as being sort of um, a marker for who God is and how God shows up, and it perhaps says something interesting about the community that this voice that this God shows up in this way, and why after such a violent um, telling would would that choice be made?
yeah.
It's a really interesting question.
Because there's a bit of exodus in the
Hmm.
echoes of this, not just in pillar of fire, wind, and all those kinds
Right,
of
right.
moments, but also the location. This is the same mountain where Moses went. This is Mount Horeb, Mount
Horeb.
Sinai, the same thing.
Yes,
Which is, that's where Moses encountered the burning bush. That's for
that's
40
right.
years in the wilderness. That's where Moses went up the mountain for 40 days to meet with God, to come down and with
Mm.
the 10 commandments. And that's where Elijah now for 40 days, the same location, same number. The person putting this story together was trying to make a connection when they just line up the
Huh.
details like that.
Right, right. Between Elijah and Moses. That is very interesting. And, I was reading about how, the violence that Elijah meets out starts on a mountain. I don't remember the name of that mountain, but it is this tale told on two mountains that is
Yeah.
also interesting, and very different, of course, tales. But I,
Yeah.
but I think also interesting this connection between Elijah and Moses. Somebody says at some point, "I'm not Elijah, I'm not Moses." I mean, they're kind of the two sort of.
Doesn't that John the Baptist is like, because people are looking for the next
Yes,
Elijah, the next Moses. I'm
that's
not them.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Ah, yeah. And it also is interesting what you pointed out about this sort of being Elijah's swan song, like he's now been relieved of his duty. And that's an interesting thing to wrestle with as well. It's like, so did he do what he was supposed to do? Is he being relieved
Mm.
of duty because something went amiss? Did he not?
Fired with cause.
Yeah, was he fired with cause? He was pink slipped. But kind of like why? If they're telling him to
Yeah,
go on. But I guess his job, his last sort of assignment is to go find this other guy
yeah, yeah.
and then maybe clean out his desk and go home. Yeah.
um, okay, aside from the text, which is full of a lot that we've already talked about here, and I know you are not one who's going to look to the political realm for your inspiration for your sermon, but you are aware of what you're swimming in. So this Sunday is Sunday, November 2nd, which is the Sunday before elections are happening.
Yes.
And there's a pretty significant one happening right there in the same physical space as the Riverside Church.
Yes. Are you talking about the mayoral election?
That seems like a big one. It's got a little bit of attention. It keeps popping up on my, FYP and Instagram reels, and I don't even live in New York City.
Right,
How does the
right.
weight and world of elections and that moment, will that be present in the sermon, or is that kind of like, nope, we're doing this and then go vote on Tuesday, everybody?
It's such a good question, and I actually hadn't yet, wrestled with where it fits. Yeah, and as you're saying, I think you want to be very careful, like assigning biblical characters or characteristics to living
Yep.
people. Like so and so is Elijah, and so is clearly the prophets who are going to be burnt up. Yeah, that's very dangerous. I do not recommend it.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. So where might it fit? I think this notion of falseness is a possible um, juicy place to go. There certainly are a lot of people, I think, in the world, not just in New York City or even in the US, who are trading in a lot of false narratives.
Yeah.
Um, and certainly false to those of us who claim Jesus Christ and follow his teachings. The narratives and the realities that we're being told about human beings being aliens or human beings being not human.
Mm,
This idea that we're being invited to buy into notions of that destroy the humanity of people that God has created. I mean, just on a basic level, basic human level, these are false prophets. These are false narratives to say
yeah.
this of people. And then, you can parse and take that into deeper waters. But I might play with the idea of falseness because we certainly are getting a lot of what we call fake news and retellings of stories. I mean, even our holy text is being used to justify and to say things that are the complete opposite of what the
Yeah.
text actually says. You may have seen this nurse who went viral. She simply read the Beatitudes, right? Blessed are the, and people were like trying to cancel her, trying to get
Wow.
her fired from her job. And she's like, friends, I am literally reading
Just
the
right here,
Bible, right? And
Matthew.
people are
We're just
like,
in the New
oh,
Testament.
exactly. You're trying to say, and she's like, I'm not trying to say anything. It's like here, like in black and white. And we're saying that we're trying to align Jesus with empire and align Jesus with wealth and
Yeah.
power and all of the things that are um, counter to who he was and what he stood for and what he preached. So I
Yep.
think there's
Yep.
possibly something juicy there.
No, because that's, I mean, that's what we still see in these stories with Elijah and company. It's like
Mhm.
there's so many prophets who just end up cozying up to the side of empire and these
Yeah.
kings and these rulers, and you can't be a prophet for love and justice and work at the court of the king. You have
Yeah.
those. It's not going to work, but people tend to try to do it. Sorry, Paula White, it's not going to be the way we can do our job here. Uh,
Right, right.
so there's that happening in the world today. That was happening in the
Yes,
text there, and that's a good way
yes.
to just look at. That's a good lens to bring to any sort of civil and political realities, whether it's a ballot box or whether
Right.
it's just how you show up to love your neighbor and care for those who are in need.
Absolutely. And there certainly are elected officials. We could, there are lists of them who have cozied up to this person in the White House who is using our Christian faith to justify very violent things.
Yeah,
Again, I wouldn't cast any of these characters as the biblical characters, but I think you can take the experiences. I think you can take the characteristics and just start asking yourself some questions. If we are in our voting or in our choices of elected officials, selecting people who are aligned with power and aligned with hate and harm, misogyny and racism, who are not on the side of the poor, who could care less about the affordability crisis in this city and around the world, and then you have a God in Jesus who says the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head.
yeah,
I was a refugee and I was a person without a home. You've got to start saying, how connected or disconnected is this? And then how will I use the power of my vote to
yeah.
affect a world that works for people who have been left out and forgotten?
Yeah.
And you can say
That
all that without naming any names. You just say, this is what the text teaches. This is what our faith says. Now you go and vote the way you think God would have you vote.
Yeah. Knowing that no candidate is ever perfect because they're
Exactly.
all people and no person is ever perfect. So it's not
Right.
a matter of saying, well, they don't do that 100%. Of
Right.
course not. But
Right.
who is the most directionally correct? And how
Yes.
can you align your life to be the most directionally correct with that? That's the purpose of this. We're not trying to
Absolutely.
superimpose this is Elijah, this is a false prophet. It's just what are
Absolutely.
the trajectories we see in here
Yep.
that we can see in here and in here. Yeah. And then how
Absolutely.
can we actually help bring them to life?
That's right. And it's never about the people. I think when we're looking at politics, and I've learned this from activists and organizers, they teach that you don't have permanent you don't have permanent friends, and you don't have permanent enemies. You have permanent agendas. And so as people
Yeah.
of faith, we know our North Star is Jesus. We know that our North Star is, for example, like the 10 Commandments, the Beatitudes, the Golden Rule, love God and love your neighbor with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so we're not looking so much at the people. We're looking at the policies, the structures, the systems, who they're aligned with, what they have done throughout their career, how it has helped or harmed the people that our faith teaches us to care about, which is the
Yeah.
last, the least, and the left out. All right.
Yeah.
If anybody is unclear, we're on the side of the poor. Catholic social gospel teaching says that Jesus had a preferential option for the poor, meaning loved everybody, but had a special place in his heart for the poor, not for the billionaires, not for the wealthy, not for the privileged, for the poor, right? Which is mostly not Americans. Even the poorest of the poor Americans
Yeah.
are not the $1 or $2 a day poor. So when you read this text and you take seriously what Jesus is saying, I think you can go and vote, as you're saying, Jim, for the person who's best aligned with that,
Yeah.
because it's clear very often in races who those people are.
Yeah. I often find, thinking back to your opening remarks about vaccines,
Mm,
people tend to vote the way they think about vaccines. This is just for me. This is to make sure I'm
right,
safe and I'm healthy. And it's
right,
like, I'm not saying we don't want people to be safe and healthy, but the purpose of a vaccine was for the community to be
right,
healthy.
right,
So it's a matter, I like to think when you vote, don't just ask who's the best candidate for me, but who's the
right.
best candidate for my neighbor and for my community, because
Exactly.
I'm a part of that community. So if they're
Right,
cared for, so am I. But if
right,
I'm cared for, then it becomes this like, I don't care about you because I got my tax break, so tough luck for you. It's like,
right.
ah,
And I think there's some people out there who would say, I wish you would vote for yourself, because a lot of people out there are voting against themselves, right?
that's so
They're
true.
actually
Yeah,
voting to harm their neighbor with intentionality, forethought, and
yeah,
malice. Um,
yeah,
I am going to make sure that immigrants are harmed. I'm going to make sure that people who are on welfare, the majority of which are white people, just to be clear, do not get their benefits. And
yeah,
they're about to take away SNAP. They are taking away health care. That's
yeah,
because people made choices with forethought that would harm other people. And that is heartbreaking. I don't think it's the best of what America has to offer. And it certainly is not Christian. It certainly
yeah,
is not what I could imagine Jesus sitting around a fire and saying to people, please vote in a way that harms um, human beings, regardless of whether they're citizens of that country. You have voted in a way that harms human beings, regardless of their skin color, their nationality, the language that they speak. We have voted to harm children, to take
yeah,
food out of the mouths of children and health care from disabled
mm,
people and children. And just the level of disconnect from the faith that we have been taught is
yeah.
mind-boggling. So I hope that people will get it together
Both on November 4th, and then we got to
and
keep doing
beyond.
it. It's not
Yes,
just one day. That day matters, but so do all the other 364 days of the year,
that's right.
because we got to keep doing the work, regardless of who gets elected. Like we're seeing, in all the ways and spaces, whether whoever's in whatever office, the work is still the work, and
That's
we're
right.
called to love and justice. Yeah,
That's right. For all people.
for all people.
If
Oh,
that is not,
that's
if that's not like
yeah,
already known, let me just tag that on.
yeah.
Not love and
Uh,
justice for just the people we like. And that's, quite frankly, something I have to wrestle with. I tell that story often about my child reminding me when she was younger and we're praying. She always ends her prayer that God would bless the people we love and the people we struggle to love, because that's
mm,
the call, right? We don't get
yeah,
to live out our faith the way politicians are inviting us to live out our politics, which is that some people are in and some people are out. The call is
yeah,
to love all the people, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of any dividing line. The call for Christians is to love God and love neighbor as yourself. And that
yeah.
means all.
Well, that'll preach. Even if it's not the particular text for Sunday, I'm pretty sure we need to work that into every text, especially when it, kind of goes up opposition to Elijah and Elisha killing people who didn't believe like them. Come on,
Right.
people. You need to meet Jesus, Elijah. We got
That's
some work to
right.
do.
That's right. I mean, but we are in the Hebrew Bible, and
So,
there's no
yep,
Jesus
yep.
yet. So we gotta, yeah, understand
Be
that.
where we are.
Be
Understand the
where we are.
context.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I
So
mean, it
all
was a
it's important.
bloody time, and again, these folks were marginal at this
Yeah.
time, so they are out of their trauma, I think, trying to make a space for themselves, and
Yep.
we get that.
So we need some trauma-informed prophets, and we need us to continue to embody love and justice, even for the people we don't always find ourselves loving.
People we struggle to love. God
Yeah.
bless them,
All
and
right,
God
that's
bless
this
them.
Sunday. Voting happens. Oh, also this Sunday, there's like a little race happening in New York City. So if you're going to church in the city, you might want to plan your route accordingly because there's going to be like 55,000 people running along all 5 boroughs for 26 miles. I'm not one of them. I didn't get into the New York Marathon. I'm running a different marathon that Sunday. Maybe next year. But get yourself to church, take the right route, or join us online. And that makes me think, if whether or not you're running the New York Marathon, if you are, please let us know because I want to cheer you on. Regardless, the Saturday after this, November
Yeah,
8th,
yeah.
Riverside is hosting our first ever Riverside Turkey Trot 5K on Randall's Island. It's a fundraiser for our social services program, so you can help Food Pantry Clothing Boutique, all the ways that we try to bring heaven to the literal hell on earth and help all the people who need help, whether or not they say the things we want them to say or believe what we want them to believe. If they need help, we are finding ways to help them and make a dent in their lives and this universe for love and justice. So can running change the world? Yes, it can on November 8th. So join us for the Riverside Turkey Trot. The link is right here on screen and down below.
Yeah.
I'll be there running it. Can't wait. So we can have a good time running together. I think half the clergy are going to be there. Half
I
of you
love
have
it.
commitments, but I know Leah's there, Mira's there,
Yeah.
Jillian is there. I don't know if Jabe is there. We need to check on Jabe.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe with the baby and a little stroller.
I think it's got to be 6 months or so babies can be pushed in a stroller like for running. So
Oh, and the
yeah, he could
vaccination.
walk. He could
Okay.
walk with the
You can
baby though.
walk.
No,
Okay.
yeah, it's just the yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, join us for all of this. If you can't make it in person to the race, there's a virtual race. Make donations. So there's lots
Right?
of ways. Help us out. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes.
I would love to run with you all. It's gonna be a blast. Okay, if you're still watching, put Turkey Trot in the chat because you made it 22 minutes in. Amazing. Turkey Trot, drop it in there, sign up, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye, everyone.